Fundraising everywhere.
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 Fundraising everywhere! Hello, fundraisers, non-profit people, charity people, and anyone at all who's watching this on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, or fundraisingeverywhere.com itself. My name is Simon Scriver. How are you all doing? If you haven't seen one of these before, this is your weekly episode of Fundraising Everywhere TV. What is Fundraising Everywhere TV, you might ask, if you've never seen it before? Is it informative? Is it educational? Is it humorous? It's probably none of those. I don't really know what it is. It's like I was going to say like a music hall, but it's like a smorgasbord, if you will, of different things which are kind of related to nonprofit sector, kind of useful, kind of helpful. But is it technically work? Is it technically useful? It's hard to say. It's hard to say. There's some good stuff in here anyway. So I apologize. I was not around last week, and I'm late this week. I'll tell you what happened very quickly, and then I'm gonna show you some good stuff. Last week I had no water in my apartment, which was a total shit show, obviously, with all the COVID-19 stuff going on. That was awful. So that's been fixed, and that's good. So I'm back on track. But then this week we were really, really busy with a couple of events on Fundraising Everywhere. We had iwitot. I wish I'd thought of that. For those who don't know what iwitot is. So if you didn't see iwitot, you can actually still watch it back. You can still buy tickets and watch the recording. It was awesome. It was really, really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd actually never been to a real life iwitot, so I finally got to attend one. And great hosts, great speakers, really good. Looking forward to finding out who the winner is, if I don't already know. So that was iwitot, and then we had the Charity Film Awards. And so, yeah, they kind of took up a lot of time this week. So they both happened on Tuesday, and I had to push this back a little bit. So here we go. But next week, let's try and get back on track, because everything's a bit more manageable from next week. So I'm not going to stick around here today. I'm not going to do a whole live bit today. I usually do a live bit, but I'm homeschooling and I have some stuff to do. But I have some cool stuff to show you today. I have an interview which I recorded. It was kind of as COVID-19 was kicking off, or maybe just before, with my old friend Patrick Allen, who is a bit of a legend, a bit of an expert on the telephone. He's great. He knows his stuff about cold calling, about appointment setting, about how to make those calls to businesses and people. And I thought it was especially relevant at the moment because many of us are being forced onto the phone when maybe we didn't particularly want to. So I've got a little interview with him. He is an old friend, so there's a lot of waffle in it. But there's also some good stuff in there because he's a really smart guy and fantastic. And then after that, we have a couple of double bills because we missed last week. We have a double bill of the Drunk Chef, John Lepp. So we're going to have 2 Drunk Chef episodes, which is awesome. I believe one of them has a guest appearance from John's business partner, Jen Love, but more importantly, a guest appearance from Jen Love's daughter, Sadie, who will be cooking with the Drunk Chef, which doesn't sound like a very good idea. But if you've never met Sadie, if you don't know Sadie, you should check this out because she's adorable. And then what have we got? We've got a double bill of Goals Gone Wild, with the ladies chatting about a couple different things. And these are always really, really entertaining. So they'll be up. And then we have a double bill of Howard Lake, tickling the ivories and playing us some music, kind of fundraising related music. No, not exactly. But Howard Lake is a great musician. And so we've got a couple of his things in there. Are there any other surprises? I'm not sure there are any other surprises. So that's what we're doing this week. We're not doing the kind of live chats and live questions and stuff and everything, but we'll be back with a full live element next week, as well as more Drunk Chef, more Goals Gone Wild, more who knows what else. Kashana TV might be back. Mo, the Unsteady Hand, might be back. We might have some new surprises lined up for you. But I like this stuff because you can watch this and you can pretend you're working when you're not actually working. So do try and join us each week. So there you go. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to say goodbye to you. and I'm just going to play you this little ad for the Fundraising Everywhere Festival, which is only a couple of weeks away or 3 weeks away. Not too late to get your tickets for the Fundraising Everywhere conference, which is happening in a couple of weeks. And then we're going to go straight into my interview with Patrick Allen, legend Patrick Allen, and then, as I said, Drunk Chef, Goals Gone Wild, and Howard Lake. Just on a more serious note, I just have to point out there's the Goals Gone Wild ladies are based in Nova Scotia, and if you heard the news, I hadn't heard the news because it didn't really make it to Ireland, I suppose, in everything. But there was a mass shooting in Nova Scotia, and I believe it was the largest mass shooting that Canada has ever seen. So there's some reference to that, just to warn you. Obviously, I'm thinking of everyone that I know out that way, especially the ladies from Girls Gone Wild. Thank you for still sending this episode across, even in the midst of all that. I really appreciate it. And I just, sending love and good thoughts to everyone who's affected by it, or who's seeing that stuff going around. It's just one thing we don't really need right now, obviously, and it's just pretty shitty. So just to warn you that will come out, that will be mentioned, but as well, that's just a little part, and then they get into the meat of the episodes, which is really, really good stuff. So that's it, my friends. That's the live thing signing off today, but we'll have a bigger live session next week. I've got some potentially good guests, not that they're potentially good, but that they're good and going to be potentially guests who are going to be joining next week. So do tune in. And obviously you can take part, and that's the great thing about Fundraising Everywhere TV. You can comment, you can post stuff on social media, and I'll see it, and we'll talk about it with whoever the guests are. And more than that, sometimes you can even come on and chat, depending on what we talk about. So it's all good. So there you go. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all surviving and managing all this stuff. I know it's very difficult. I know a lot of people are hitting walls, having bad days, having big blips, struggling with balancing the personal stuff and the work stuff, and also struggling with whoever they're living with, because you can't escape them. So thoughts with all of you. I hope you're all doing all right. We'll get through this, and just give us a shout if there's anything I can ever do for you. But there you go. That's me. I'll talk to you later. Lovely to see you all.
What I wish I'd known when I first started fundraising.
What I wish I'd known.
Something that we wish we knew when we first started out.
What we wish we'd known.
One thing I wished I'd learned when I raised my first dollar for nature in 1969.
Something I wish I had discovered much earlier in my career.
I wish that I'd known when I first started my fundraising career.
And I'm going to bend the rules a little bit around that.
And mine's this.
you want to describe it, then that hopefully differentiates you from the other guys who are not doing it, who are just trying to go in there for the money. And as I say, keeping going back to it, but it shows integrity. It shows that you're not just looking to get their money.
You said at the beginning there about who you're calling, and obviously who you're calling is, you know, as important, sometimes more important than what you're actually saying on the phone. How do you guys and your staff and all the people you work with, how do you figure out who to call? Are you just going through, do they even still make the yellow pages? I don't know, but do you just like go through the Google yellow pages, or how do you narrow it down to the people who are most likely to entertain this conversation?
Sure. So typically, the stage where someone would look to engage with me, as in a client would look to use my services, I would hope that they have a pretty good idea of the type of the industry that they need to sell their products to, who within that particular industry is likely to make decisions within the company. So they would have in their mind the industry, the person that makes the decisions in terms of whether or not they should buy products, and if they've got those things, then typically you're on to a good start. If you don't have those things, then you really need to think about who you are targeting, because it's a big old world out there. So yeah.
So then your well, I suppose more so now your kind of staff or your team, or you know, because you're a bit of a big deal now, I imagine you don't make as many calls yourself. But when you're working down this list of people you're going to call, what kind of prep do you do? Is it literally like you're going to open up the same way with all of them, or do you do a bit of research in terms of, you know, what this person's story is and what's the best thing I can say, or is it a numbers game for you guys, or what?
That's a really good question. The theory,
that's why I have a problem.
Yeah, indeed. You should go into it. The theory is that you should do research on everything. Now, almost as a side, one's sales style will work for the particular person, but it will differ from the person that they sit next to, and it will work for them. For example, you can have more than one way to skin a cat, etc. You can have this. You can sell the same product but totally different. So you've got to work out your own way of selling what you feel comfortable doing and what works. My own to actually answer the question, my own style is to actually, it is more of a numbers game for me. As long as I know that, so I've got a client that works in the manufacturing industry, sells to the manufacturing industry. So I know that they're all in manufacturing. I don't need to necessarily go onto their website, check out the exact products that they do, because primarily it takes time to do that. The other thing is, you make a phone call, the chance of you getting through to that particular person you want to speak to are say 1 in 10. So you might have done all this work and then just not spoken to the person anyway. And you know, and these days, if I'm speaking to the person, I suddenly feel like I need to go onto their website, I can probably do it whilst I've got them on the call anyway. I don't do that. I know people do that, and it might be beneficial for them, but I have had success by not doing that. So that's what I do.
Well, your hand-eye coordination isn't great, and so it'd be hard for you. Patrick,
I misspell. I press return and then the screen goes back. It can be complicated.
Yeah, like you're on the wrong website, and you're like,
exactly.
So I've noticed that you sell, and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I'm really curious about the different styles, because obviously you've seen a lot of callers and you've trained a lot of callers, and you're right, they're a different style. Let me tell you about, because I used to sell timeshare in the United States, in California. I used to cold call timeshare.
Did you?
And I was okay at it. You know, I wasn't getting fired, as a lot of people were getting fired every day. But there was this guy, who used to come in. He was an older gentleman, and he used to come in, whereas we all started at like 9 a.m. He started at like lunchtime.
Yeah.
And he'd come in and just real casual, he'd just like get on the phone and he'd make his sales and he'd like top the charts, and then he'd go home, make lots of money. But I remember hearing him on the phone one time, and he phoned this guy called Fred, cold call, and he was like, Fred, they said you were dead. They said you were dead, Fred. And the guy on the other end was like, what? And then he just like started talking to him, and he sold like timeshare, or he set up like the meeting for this timeshare stuff. And it was like, I just you know, that's like 20 years ago, and it stuck with me because there's no way you'd ever train someone to talk like that or be like that over familiar or just weird. But obviously, you know, we're humans talking to humans. I suppose there isn't one right way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I came across a really funny video the other day of a guy who'd been very successful, so was coming for a lot of money. It was a sales company, and they said, "Oh, how did you get around the gatekeeper?" And he told a story whereby he would pretend that he was in the middle of an argument with someone and would shout, and this is when the gatekeeper picks up the phone. So the gatekeeper picks up the phone. He would pretend that he's midway through an argument, and his words were, "Just tell him I'm going to sue the fucking bastards." And then go, "Can I speak to so-and-so, please?" And she'd be so shocked and like bewildered and sort of, this guy's obviously a big shot. I will put you through to the CEO. He said it worked for him. He said it absolutely worked for him. I could never do that. It's not our personality. It's not, and you've got to sell with your personality. You know, I'm going to say a lot of cliches on this call, but people do buy from people. And if you're fake, it can often come across that way. So I'm all about just, you know, as Saki was saying, selling with integrity, being honest with people as much as you can. That leads into your own style. I work with a girl, and she has a very different. She actually probably does do a lot more research than me. And she's she's probably more organized than me as well, but it wouldn't be hard. But I'd say she does do a lot more research, and that works for her. I don't feel I need to do that. I'll do what I can as much as possible to get what I want, and my style works for me. So
do you have a laugh on the phone, like with people, because you are quite you're a bit of a messer, and you know I have a lot of love for you, Patch. But you obviously have your business mode and you have your personal mode. When you're in business mode, are you like unrecognizable? Are you just all about the business? Are you all serious? Are you all? Are you Patrick?
I'm
Patch.
I am definitely Patrick, because there'd be why is this dog phoning me called Patch? But I personally do like to try and have a giggle with someone, because it gets more on side, and also it's more enjoyable for you to be able to do that. It creates empathy a lot more. It shows that you're human. Again, people like buying from people that they like. So two ways. I mentioned the gatekeeper. Really try and get them as on side as much as possible. So again, combining both a little bit of humor, and honesty. I get asked the question a lot. Or have been asked the question a lot. Is he expecting your call? Does she know you? Have you spoken to them before? And I always tell the truth. So I always say, no, I haven't. What's it about? I say it's a sales call. We sell. We do this. This is how we help companies. And I got told that they're the best person to speak to. You know, if they say, have you spoken to them before? I quite often would say, I'd love to say yes. I'd love to say yes. I have spoken to them, that they know what I'm calling about, but I don't, and I don't want to lie to you. So look, it gets respect, but of respect, probably about 0.2%. But you do have a little bit of a giggle. Sometimes you don't, but you know, that's.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about that kind of honesty, because actually I saw the Patrick that I know come out there, where you're saying like, I'd love to tell you that I have spoken to them before, but I haven't. Like I don't know if you know that or not, but that's a real you phrase where you're like, I'd love to tell you this, but it's not. But these gatekeepers you're talking to, well, I suppose anyone, there's a level of honesty which really adds to your call or your conversation. Like one of the phrases that I always say is amazing is telling people I don't know. You know, if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, rather than trying to waffle through it or cover it up or lie to them, if you say I don't know, but I'll find out for you, people seem to really warm to that, because they can tell when you're being genuine or not genuine.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's so important to be able to do that. And we've all had calls where I'm sure where people have phoned up, and it's obviously a sales call, and you say, "Oh, can I they're asking you if you're CEO, and you say, "Oh, can I ask what it's about?" And they go, "Yeah, I just want to talk to him about so and so." And you say, and I have said before in the past, "Well, can I just ask you, is it sales call?" And they go, "No, it's just talking about this." And you're like, "Well, is that free?" And they say, "No, it's not free." So it is a sales call. Tell me it's a sales call. I don't mind it's a sales call, but I just want to know. And if you go against people that have that style, then that's great, because you come out as honest, and everyone wants to buy from honest people. You're more likely to get, in my opinion, you're more likely to get put through to the person if you do try and get the gatekeeper on side, and it makes your life more enjoyable because you're not getting the phone slammed down every time. So getting the gatekeeper on side definitely makes life a lot easier. And I think being honest and saying yes, it's a sales call, like great, it's sales. There are millions of them happening every single minute. It's no big deal.
Yeah. What I want you to explain to me, because this is a difficult one, but if your team, your kind of industry is setting up meetings for other people, how does that handover work? Because you're putting in a lot of work trying to get the person on the other side of the phone to say yes or whatever, and then you're saying, "Oh, but it's not me. I'm gonna palm you off to the person." How does that go down?
Quite simple, really. I'll depending on who it is I'm trying to get into the achieve meeting for, it'll either be 2 words, a colleague or my director, and I will say, my director has asked me to give you a call because we'd love to talk to you about how we help manufacturing companies with X, Y, and Z. I got told you're the right person to speak to. Is that the case? And then they'll go into it, and you'll find out a little bit more about their business. You'll ask some questions, and then again, it depends on how comfortable you feel doing it. I have I've often in the past said, "This is what we do. My director would like to come and see you, and he wanted to see if you were free on this date or this date." And very often, well, not very often, but successfully, ratio speaking wise, people start looking at their diary and go, "Yeah, I am actually free on that." And then you start asking questions about their business. I actually tend to do that less now, but I mean, I always say to people, as my director, talk to them a bit about the business, as I say, and then say, "Okay, well, we can help. We'd love to come in on this date or this date." Always offer an alternative date. And take it from there. So it's not that bit's not complicated. I would then send an invite to the person and copy in my clients, put it into their diaries, so everyone knows where they are, and then send an email to the client and say, this is the situation with this appointment.
Well, it obviously works for you because you're successful. What are like some of your favorite questions that you'd ask people on this phone call? Do you find anything particular?
How do I make you look good? And try and get them on side. Again, you're creating empathy. You're looking like you're a partner rather than you just want to flog them something. So I mean, always you want to get an idea of whether or not the person you're speaking to bought the original product or service, because if they did buy the original product, they're going to be a bit more sensitive about it, because they don't want to be seen in front of their bosses that the previous service or product they bought didn't work, and now they're trying to get another one. It makes them look bad. So if they didn't buy it, then that's on that particular occasion, it's probably advantageous for you, because they won't be precious about it.
They probably hate it themselves.
They could hate it and say it's rubbish. And we are looking for a new system. So it's there are a fair few questions that you can get. How long have you had that? How long have you had it? in place at the moment. You're just at this stage, the beginning stage of asking the questions, you're just trying to sort of open up the pain that I suppose you spoke about earlier. Like how can we fit our products around what your need is?
Yeah, it's
and
like a fact finding. You're trying to understand them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all these questions. The questions are so vital. Not only does it make you look like you're trying to help them, that you're coming across in a really professional way. The biggest reason why you have to do it is because it helps you create an argument to why your product is going to help them. Without that argument, you've essentially got no argument to why. So that's why it's really important.
It's funny because we seem to spend a lot of time in sales and in the charity sector as well. We talk a lot about like the elevator pitch, and you got 5 minutes. What would you say? But actually, it seems like what's much more effective is if we put some time into thinking, okay, what are the best questions to ask? What are the best? How can we make this conversation move along, as opposed to how can you talk at someone for 5 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a cliche, but the old two ears, one mouth. So the ratio that you want to be going not cups. So the ratio that you want to go for is you are speaking 50% less than the person that you're speaking to on the phone. So these questions, so that's what you want to be getting at, because you need to get that argument. You need to be able to put in place the reasons to why they should buy from you. And if you don't know why they should buy from you because you've not asked any questions, then that puts you at a major disadvantage. So
I like that. So you're obviously do you get like much negativity? And I mean that's usually one of the bits I get, where if I'm trying to get a charity to use the telephone more, to ask for money or to reach out to people, usually there's a bit of resistance, and often it comes from the feeling that people hate it and we're going to annoy people. But like from having done these calls and having managed people who've done these calls, the negativity is a lot less than you almost assume it would be. Do you find that? Do you find people telling you to fuck off? Are people hanging up on you? What's happening?
I don't think anyone's ever told me to fuck off. I don't think so. We have had people. Pardon?
It's early days.
Yeah, it is early days. Yeah. Well, I've definitely been hung up on. 100%. Because what you've got to understand, and I think you've almost got to get into a mindset where you should expect negativity, but try not to worry. Try out. And it's very easy for me to ignore the possible negative scenarios, and I understand that it's not easy for everybody. But as much as you possibly can do, like you've got to be aware that people are busy, people have had bad days. The last thing they need is a sales call, but it's not personal, and that's where you've got to get into your head, that if someone does hang up on you, they don't know you. They're not doing it because you're you or you've annoyed them or something. Well, you might have annoyed them, but do you know what I mean? Like it's not down to you. It's just because they might be having a bad day, and so don't worry about it. Move on to the next one. So
it has no impact on the next call. The person who hangs up on you, it's not going to make any difference to the next call.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's I do think you need to get into mindset saying that not everyone is going to be open their arms to me. And if you can, as much as possible, get over that, then it will help you. But also the other thing is it's come back to the reasons to why you can genuinely help them. Like you have created take the charity sets for example, but you have created strong. Let's use the brand recognition example again. You've created strong brand recognition for a number of charities. Why wouldn't they want to talk to you about that? At least talk to you about it. Open up a dialogue. I'm not saying that they should definitely there and then look to give you money. And I guess that's the other point, is don't necessarily go into these calls. For my, maybe it's different in the charity sector, but I don't necessarily go into these calls looking to sell to them on that particular call. Like it takes a while to build up trust and credibility, etc. And so go into that call. The first call for me is about finding out, am I wasting my time trying to sell to this person? And if I'm not wasting my time sell to this person, then I want to sell to this person. And at that point, I will then bring out the questions and ask those series of questions about whether or not we're the right fits.
Makes sense. Do you think like telesales, if you want to call it, would you call it telesales? Using the telephone to sell. Do you think it's just going to decline and decline? Like, do you think we're going to move away from it, or do you think, what's coming in to replace it? Like, what's the future of this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think as long as people have access, I think as long as businesses have phones in their business, then I think that there will always be a need. You will always be able to use cold calling as
it will always work.
Yeah, and it's like any direct mail is still one of the highest return on investment marketing channels that you can use, and it's, I don't know, 100 years old, if not more, and everyone said direct mail's dead, but it's complete cobblers. I remember about 5 years ago now, working for a company, and Google sent us all vouchers through the mail, and you just think, well, if Google are doing direct mail, there's got to be something in there.
And like Twitter emails you, and like Facebook phones you, and you know, like it's all these things that are kind of saying they're replacing something. They all use that old media because it still works.
Yeah, and I still think, and I don't think I'll ever not think this, but I still think a business should have people that are accessible by the phone, customer service reasons for more than anything. And it might get harder. Mobiles you might just have a mobile, but I still think people do want to speak to people. As long as that's the case, then sort of telesales will always be. Appointment setting by phone will always be. You'll always be able to do it.
Yeah, even if it moves away from like the old school phone, big network masts, and it's all going through online, and it's like not so much phone numbers, but it's like connecting people through the internet. It's still voice.
Yeah,
there's always going to be a place for voice, because that's just how we work as humans.
Exactly. Nothing more to say on that. I think as long as you can have access to someone to speak to them, then this medium is always going to be valid.
I agree. There's that I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to ask you, because what popped into my head was, obviously you've worked for a lot of businesses and a lot of clients, but you have a special relationship with John Lewis, don't you? John Lewis customer service.
So for the listeners out there, I used to live next to John Lewis in the town that I grew up in, and I think what Si's referring to is when a lady phoned up my house phone and I picked up, and she started talking to me about how she had a problem with her order. It was the wrong size, it was the wrong fit. What am I going to do about this? And I'm just a 12-year-old kid at home listening to this, politely going, oh man, when is this lady going to shut up? And I can interrupt her, tell her that I'm not the person if she phoned the wrong number. So she finally stopped talking, and I said, I'm sorry, you've actually phoned the wrong number. And she said, well, you've wasted my time then, haven't you? And I was like, oh my God, I am going to go into a rage. And I said,
didn't you used to get calls all the time?
All the time.
Because your phone number was like what, just like one digit differently?
Yeah, it must have been. I must have been. Yeah, it is surprising how many people can't read a telephone number or have or misdial.
Their dialing stick, their poking dialing stick is
it's gone off target.
Too fat. Your fingers are too fat for this number.
Yeah, exactly that. But yeah, that was a particularly good one when I was accused of wasting her time.
I wonder if that shaped your career path, that kind of phone experience of dealing with these random people.
It just made me want to help people via the phone. Maybe it did. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah,
I found that really helpful because, I always find you really helpful in terms of picking your brains around business and stuff like that. You're a smart guy.
I think. Sorry, I've interrupted you. You go.
No, I was just complimenting you. It's not important. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Damn, I interrupted a compliment. Never do that. But I think the takeaway is that don't try and be that sales guy that nobody likes, because you need people on side to get you where you want to get to achieve that goal. So, you know, it's a lot nicer being nice to someone like a gatekeeper who's taking 20 calls that day already, and being honest with them up front to why you're calling, and don't treat people like idiots, because they're not, and people respect that. So I think that for me has worked a lot of my sales career. And don't get me wrong, I probably did go down the alternative route and didn't like it and didn't get very far and quickly changed. So
yeah, well, you've got the years behind you where I suppose you've fine-tuned your craft, and I suppose anyone can do that. You know, if people put the time, put the energy into these kind of phone calls, they work for them. But it's not something that just comes naturally. It's a skill that we develop, and I think you're an expert in that area. It's cool.
Thanks for them. Yeah. Thanks very much, and thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time, Patch. I know you're a busy man. If people want to get in touch with you or have a few questions to ask you, because you're a very helpful person and you put a lot out there in terms of training and teaching, where do we find you, Patrick Allen?
Please ask away. So the best way to get me is my email address, which is patrick.allen@prosperbd.co.uk, and Allen is ALLEN. So that's Patrick, PATRICK.ALLEN@prosperbd.co.uk. And also
Jesus Christ, that's like the most complicated way of giving an email address I've ever had.
A lot of people get it wrong because misspelling Allen, etc. So and also LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
Say it one more time from start to finish. Patrick.Allen.
There we go. See, it's the same one. Patrick.Allen
at prosperbd.co.uk.
Yeah,
that's good. And then where else you?
So LinkedIn. So if you type in Patrick Allen LinkedIn Prosper Business Development, I'll come up. And also I'll have. You can edit that bit out. I was going to talk about the website, but
your brand new website is about to be launched.
Yeah, so my brand new website is about to be launched. The address for that is prosperbd.co.uk.
Yeah, but if it's between pages, when someone goes onto it, they can just email you.
Yeah, they can. Yeah,
I think I heard one of your kids in the background, and so that's signal that it's time to wrap up.
That is mad, because I think they're downstairs, but I believe they are.
It's that piercing noise which just carries through the house.
If it's not them, then God knows what's going on.
Some kid broke into your house about to.
That would be a story. Yeah, cool. All right, fella.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks a million for your time, Pat. Really lovely to talk to you, as always. And sure, I'll talk to you soon.
No worries. How does it work now? Do you get these? Just send out the final version online or on your website?
We're still doing it.
Yeah, but you can edit this bit out.
I'm going to keep it in. Yeah, so you'll be published probably next week or the next couple of weeks, and I'll tag you when I put it up there, and you'll find it on Spotify and iTunes and Podbean and wherever you get your podcasts, Pat.
Do I see it before it goes out?
No, because then people always have with their own stuff. You know, whereas you're great, like you're amazing, but you'll always pick holes in yourself.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah.
What are you into?
Oh, you won't like it. So it's football. But I listened to how I built this. Do you know how I built this?
No.
It's really good by Guy Raz. It's about all businesses and what they did to get to where they got to.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. How I built this by Guy Raz, or Guy Raz, I think his name is.
Guy's the real sales name, isn't it?
Guy.
Hey, this is Guy.
How I built, I work with a guy. Guy Raz. How I built this. It's really good.
Okay. But now I am actually going to wrap this up because your kids are waiting and I'm getting hungry. So Patrick, Allen, very nice to see you. Very nice to talk to you.
Likewise, Simon Scriver. Peace out. See you, mate. Okay. Bye.
I'm recording.
Oh, sorry.
I can't
The
swallow.
drunk
I
chef.
can't swallow under pressure. Okay.
I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. Well, this college club of living in this crowd room needs a new religion, and I need it pretty soon. I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to cuss, I used to fuss.
Welcome back to another brand new episode of The Drunk Chef. Tonight, what I'm going to make is something on the grill. I'm basically going to make a thing called drunken steak. Now, you can make drunken steak in a bunch of different ways, but basically looking for something where, again, I don't need a designated driver to get home, or you don't get a bit of the taste of the alcohol. In this case, I'm going to use a light rum, but you could also try using tequila. So this is how you make it. So for the drunken steak, it's pretty simple to make, very simple to make. Like I said, we've got some white rum, light rum. You could probably use darker rum too, I imagine. Soy sauce, brown sugar. I've got a clove of garlic, and some ginger. And of course, I'm going to use a flank steak. You could use like a skirt steak or something like that. And this is how we make it. So for my marinade, I'm going to add a cup of the rum, half a cup of soy sauce, tablespoon of brown sugar. I'm going to add my clove of garlic. Then I need a tablespoon of ginger, fresh ginger, and I'm going to grate it. You can peel it if you want before you grate it, but I just grate the skin and all and stuff. I don't really mind it. It still adds all the same flavor. Adding a tablespoon of grated ginger. Next, I've got my flank steak here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to score it sort of every inch and a bit. And then I'm going to turn it and basically do the same thing. Turn it over and do the same thing. I'm also going to reserve about a quarter cup of the marinade and just put that aside for after. And then I'm going to put this in my fridge for about anywhere from an hour to 4 hours. I'm going to do probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours to let marinate, and then we'll be good to go. But don't do it any longer than 4 hours, because otherwise the steak will go mushy. So it's been a couple hours, and it's time to take the steak out. We just want to pat it dry, because if you put a wet piece of meat on the grill, it's actually going to steam more than it's actually going to get some char. So it has to be kind of dried off. So my grill is just about hot. I've got to turn up as high as it can go. I think I get about 600 degrees out of it. You can also use charcoal as well, but tonight I'm just going to use gas because convenience. So I got my grill all fired up here. I'm sitting around 650 degrees. Let's get that up here. So I've got that going on the grill. I'm going to put on for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'm just going to flip it to one time. So after 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to turn it over and let it cook for another 5 or 6 minutes, and then pull it off when it's around 120 degrees or so, and we'll see how it looks. Just in case you're wondering what I'm having on the side, I charred some corn and mixed it in with some red onion, jalapeno, about a pint of tomatoes, and cilantro, and then I mixed in about half a cup of lime juice and salt and pepper. I'm just having it as a nice sort of side salsa. It's got some heat with the jalapeno and stuff like that, but with the steak, it's a nice sort of spicy balance, and it looks really nice. Oops. Okay, let's just have a little look here. Give it a flip. Look at that. Isn't that great? Woo! Nice caramelization, mostly from the sugar and from the heat. Looks good. Okay, I'm going to cover this for 5 to 10 minutes. I'm gonna let it rest. So this has been resting. Got all these nice juices coming from it. That's perfect. Now slice it up. Now the thing with flank steak is you have to cut it against the grain. Okay, if you cut, you can kind of see the grains right here. If you cut it this way, it will be really, really chewy, and we don't really want that. So first I'm going to cut it in half. Just slice it nice and thin. Then remember this, our extra marinade. I'm going to just put that over top. Barbecued drunken flank steak. I hope you enjoy it. I know I will.
I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. As a comfort's club of living in this crowd room, need some new religion and I need it pretty soon. I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to cuss, I used to fuss.
Hello, I'm Howard Lake from UK Fundraising. Welcome to another episode of Fundraising Tune of the Day. That was Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring by J.S. Bach. It's actually a version arranged for piano solo by Myra Hess, Dame Myra Hess. So this piece of music and the relevant fundraising tip is knowing your history and making the most of that. This was a piece of music that was particularly famous during the Second World War when Dame Myra Hess performed it to the public in the dark days of 1939 and 40, around the time of the Blitz, certainly during the Second World War. So this piece has obviously a history way beyond that, to the time when it was composed by J.S. Bach, but it does have a particular resonance to a certain age group of people and those that know its history. So my fundraising tip is know your history. Trade on it now. Remind people of where your charity started, where you've come from, and the long history of delivering service and change in people's lives. People need to be reminded of that now when there's so much competition for funding and for public support. If you're not an older existing charity, then you can still do that. You can still trade on the power and the imagination that brought your charity into life. Think of your origin story, the person that founded your charity, that made you, that got off and decided to make a difference because they saw something that needed changing in the world. Remind yourself and convey that if you can in all your digital communications and your fundraising asks. Remind people of where you've come from and why you work to do what you try to do. Tune in soon for another episode of Fundraising Tune of the Day. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah with Goals Gone Wild. And before you watch this episode of Talk is Cheap, we wanted to come on here and talk to you for a second. When we stopped recording this episode, we found out that there had been a mass shooting. And in fact, the worst mass shooting in Canada happened in our own backyard, right here in Nova Scotia. Well, police are still investigating. We know that people have lost their mother, their daughter, their father, their husband. Communities have lost a teacher and nurses, a 17-year-old fiddler, and an RCMP officer who ran towards the scene to try to protect others. At a time when we need to be together, we cannot. So please take a moment to think of those who have lost people, to think about your family and friends, and to the first responders around the world that we all rely on. There's a saying that the cure for anything is salt water, sweat, tears, or through the sea. In Nova Scotia, we are surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean, and many will want to visit to feel that sea salt. Through hard work and determination to rebuild as a community, we will sweat. But for now, we have tears. Please stay safe.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of Talk is Cheap with Goals Gone Wild, home edition still, just like you. I'm Sarah.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Liz.
And I'm Marnie.
And today, as promised, we have a very special guest. We have Ligia Pena. Welcome, Ligia.
Yay! So happy to be here.
Thank you for being our first guest and trusting in us and joining us this early Sunday morning. Very much appreciative. So if you don't know who Ligia is, A, you should, but B, I'm going to let you know who she is. She's a wonderful human, first of all. But secondly, she's also CFRE, a member of the Institute of Fundraising, and she is the Global Legacy Manager at Greenpeace International, where she oversees the organization's global legacy strategy in 14 countries. We're gonna definitely have to touch on that. She is also a PhD candidate at the University of Kent, where she is researching nonprofits' attitudes towards national legacy marketing umbrella campaigns as a tool to change society's behavior towards gifts in wills. Ligia is a sought after, so we're so super happy that she's here with us, and seasoned presenter around the globe, and she serves on the advisory board of Rogare. Oh, Ian's told me how to say it. A philanthropy think tank. She is the author of the Small Shop Fundraising chapter in the second volume of Excellence in Fundraising in Canada, and various articles in AFP's newsletter, Advancing Philanthropy. When she's not geeking out on legacy-related things, she's either knitting, cooking, or planning her next trip. So Ligia, welcome. You know, I think one of the first questions, I know Liz has all of our questions, but 14 countries that you work in and you love to travel. Why is Halifax your most favorite place in the world?
Because of the seafood, need I say more? And of course, you lovely ladies, duh. But obviously, actually, you know, it's funny because, yeah, my bio says 14 countries, but I think it's actually like 14 offices, because some offices are like multi-country offices. Like our Nordic country has, our Nordic office has 4 countries. So it's actually more markets than that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's like a technicality. But yeah, it's really super cool. It's my dream job.
That's amazing. One of the big things that has been kind of coming up in our, you know, conversations as fundraisers and organizations over the last little while since COVID-19 started is now, in light of people being so conscious of mortality and the fragility of life, and it is now the right time to be putting plan giving or gift planning legacy messaging out there as an organization. And obviously, with you being an expert in this area, we thought we'd ask you your thoughts on that and what our audience should know. Our audience, I'm assuming there is one, but there's an audience.
Just our moms.
And maybe 1 or 2 partners. If they understand what we do for a living.
Please share for our audience. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a really pretty interesting discussion in some circles.
Yeah.
Social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so absolutely. We should be communicating about plan giving, bequests, gifts and wills, legacies, whatever terminology you want to use. Absolutely. Just like any other fundraising, I think we should not at all be stopping fundraising because of the pandemic. If anything, we're seeing increase in donations because people have a bit more disposable income for those who do have disposable income. And so I think it's a big mistake to stop promoting legacies. Having said that, we do need to be a little bit more extra careful than with regular gifts or monthly gifts because of the target audience. And I've written a blog post, and this is what I've been presenting in webinars lately, is I think it's important to engage with our donors by to check in on them. This is the perfect time to do that stewardship. But in terms of acquisition, of actually like soliciting for plan gift, I think it would be very poorly perceived, and you need to be extremely careful. I would say this is perhaps the time when you wouldn't want to be doing any acquisition for your legacy pipeline, but you definitely want to engage with your donors to move them through your pipeline. So engage with them, reinforce their gift. If they've already confirmed their pledge, continue that conversation with them. And if they said that they were intending or considering it, continue talking with them to move them through that process. But probably don't try to do any new acquisition, because then you will look like an ambulance chaser, and we don't want to be looking like that. What's really important to know, what perhaps a lot of people don't know, is that we've seen a huge increase in many markets, namely in Canada. It's been written in Canada, in the US, in the UK, and in a lot of the other countries where lawyers are saying that they are busier than ever because people are flocking to their advisors for to either write their first gift, update write their first will is what I meant. Write their first will or update their will. So people are very much aware of their mortality right now, like you said. And so I think what organizations should be doing first and foremost is making sure that their website is updated, that it's very, very clear how they can make a gift in their will. Provide them with sample language, a sample codicil, any tool that can facilitate the process.
Great. Yeah, I know that we're coming up at the end of April and heading into May, which is going to be traditionally in Canada is the Leave a Legacy Month. Do you think that there's going to be a bit of a shift in the kind of messaging that we're going to see out there in market or is, like you said, is it going to be more informational? I mean, maybe it's always been that way, but I'm just curious how you think that the current situation is going to affect any of that.
I'm not sure how like the Leave a Legacy month will be affected. I don't know what CAGP's stand is on that and what they've decided, especially that they just rebranded with calling it Willpower and everything.
Yeah.
So I think they're still in that, because they're still in that startup and in implementation and testing. I'm not sure if they're going to do a full out, well, I guess they're going to have to call it something different than Leave a Legacy Month.
Yes, right.
but
we're not. I don't know if we're not supposed to use the Leave a Legacy language, but anyways, yes, fair enough.
But
Yep.
while we're in transition, so I don't know what their plans are for that. But having said that, if your organization was planning to do something around the month of May around that topic, I think I think it would make sense to do it, but perhaps tweak your messaging, because that month is really about trying to do acquisition and educating. So I think you can still continue doing the education, but without pushing the acquisition side of things. So you still need to review your messaging. On that as well, something referring back to like when Sarah was introducing me about being on the Canadian Advisory Committee of Rogare, we're currently doing a study to see the ethical implications of legacy fundraising right now during the pandemic. And so we're working on that, and we're hoping to have a white paper, I think by the end of the month or beginning of May. So if we
really interesting, opportune time for that to be coming out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
So I have a question,
doing that.
Ligia, I have a question. So planned giving and legacy asks are not my strong suit. Marnie has taken me to lunch with people who work in the legacy industry to tell me how to, to feel different about it. But you have such a passion for it. I mean, how did you get started in legacy giving that it's led you to this passion?
I think it goes back to my first professional paid fundraising job back in 2002. I was working for the YMCA of Montreal. Well, at the time it was called the YMCA of Montreal. Now it's called the YMCA of Quebec. I knew about a year and a half after I started there, a new director of development was hired, and she came from a children's hospital, and she had been the planned giving person at the hospital, and so she shared a lot of her knowledge, and she kind of transferred that on to me. And I started getting really, really interested. So that's when I did my first legacy gift. It's not in my will. It's a gift of life insurance. I was like, wow, this is so simple and easy. Why aren't more people doing this? And that's where it kind of snowballed from that point forward. Fast forward a few years later, I started my own consulting business, and my goal was to bring planned giving to small organizations, because I think it's a shame that so few small organizations are not doing planned giving, when I think if they would have a strong legacy program, then I think that would really solidify their financial position. But it's hard. It's hard to change the change management aspect of that, of like changing mindsets about long-term fundraising planning versus the immediate is really, really difficult. That could turn into like a whole new conversation, let me tell you.
I've actually seen Paul Nazareth has put a few things out there on social media about which has been interesting in the time of a pandemic, that a lot of organizations are trying to figure out how to, oh God, I hate this word, but pivot their event strategies, when what they really should be doing is going hard and implementing marketing and some focus on gift planning and estate planning, etc., because now's the time. And yeah, I think it is interesting to get nonprofits to shift from the immediate to the long-term thinking.
Yeah.
And especially in a time of crisis where it's financially, like a lot of nonprofits are really struggling right now with so much cash coming in the door. To get boards to think past the next 2-3 months is almost next to impossible at the best of times. So, and now it's even more amplified. But yeah, it would be great if I think if this situation were to, if anything, encourage people to think more about legacies and what they're planning on leaving behind. That would be a wonderful I hate saying outcome, but impact of this current situation.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I keep talking every time I talk about, this is a time for charities to share their impact. And I think that marries so well with the story of legacy giving and thinking about the future and how an individual can have that significant impact on a charity. I think they marry well.
Yeah. What I was going to say is I've been reflecting about this exact point for the last couple of weeks. And I started jotting down notes. I want to write something very thoughtful of, once we're past that, once we're on the other side of this situation, what can nonprofits start implementing so that they don't find themselves in this situation where, they're not there, they have to furlough their fundraising staff, which to me is still something that makes me want to rip my hair out, because I'm just like, you're basically cutting yourself at the knee. That's your source of income. It's not the source of your expenses. So I think it speaks a lot about what the nonprofit sector thinks about fundraisers and what their role are, and the place they have in the future of the organization. But also about financial planning. And I think we talk very little about being fiscally responsible and long-term financial planning. I mean, we do that in our own lives when we sit down and we do our taxes and we're like, okay, well, so how much do I have in my RSPs? And like, how much will I have when I retire and all that kind of stuff? But do organizations do that?
Yeah, and estates and legacies are often a really strong source of undesignated income that you could put towards reserve funds. So, I think that the unrestricted aspect of gift planning is something that people often don't think of. It's usually our most flexible source of giving. Often being left to you with the idea that you will manage it appropriately after they're gone. And I think a lot of donors I've worked with on these pieces have been very happy to know that a portion of their estate would help continue the good work of the organization you work for. That's not always the case with major gifts or annual giving. It's often very much specifically allocated or designated. And I think you're right. This is an opportunity for gift planning to shine post-pandemic.
Yeah, and not only that, it's also which opens the conversation about endowment building. And so why aren't you, yes, there is a consideration. The economy dropped, and so the value of endowments dropped as well, but we know the economy always goes back up. So like losing your mind over that is useless. It's useless.
Yeah.
So let's get past that. And even if the value of your endowment dropped, if you have to make that decision of whether you lay off half of your workforce or dip into your endowment fund, to me, I mean, the decision is pretty straightforward, right? Like that's what an endowment is for, right? And the other point I wanted to say is like, we sometimes think, oh, well, this happens in small and medium-sized organizations that are really like event focused or whatever. Well, I work for a large global organization and we're facing that too. So it's hitting everybody. It's not because you're big and global that you're necessarily well set up. I'm not saying we're not well set up.
I know it. Yeah.
There's some of the long-term financial thinking and planning. It hasn't happened. Like we don't have an endowment fund.
Yeah. And it's symptomatic, I think, of the industry as a whole too, right? I think this is where fundraisers, we always come back to this idea of being overhead. Dan Pallotta has done a lot of work around that as well, and many others, that we have to shift this narrative that your fundraising team are not just an extra expense, that they're not delivering value, that they're not providing an organization with value. And I think we've talked as a group with lots of fundraisers in our market and across North America over the last few weeks about that sense of value and what we provide. So I think what you're talking about really resonates with a lot of people in our industry right now. Yeah, like you said, you're kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face when you take your fundraising team out first. And that's unfortunate for sure. Yeah, I've been talking a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Marnie.
I was going to say the other piece that I'm seeing a little bit of is this this idea that the reserve fund was set aside to be strategic, to take on a major project. So even though the current situation meets all the requirements to access that reserve fund and keep your operations going, some of the boards and nonprofits are like, hold up, we don't want to touch that. We'd rather furlong our staff. We'd rather lay people off. We'd rather cut services. And I have the sense that you built up that reserve fund specifically to be able to maintain your services through events that you couldn't imagine, like the one that we're in today. So what's the point of holding on to that if the organization suffers over the long term?
I'm pretty sure that the donors who contributed to that fund would be really ticked off to know that you're hanging on to that cash. I only know one organization that, well, actually the YMCA, when I worked there, so prior to me working there, they had dipped into their endowment fund and had dropped it by 50% because they had gone through, this was when there was in the 90s when the economy tanked. They saw themselves in that situation, and in order to keep going and not have to cut exactly staff and resource and everything, they dipped into their endowment fund, and that was the most responsible thing they could have done. But then they did have it in their long-term plan that they would do an endowment campaign to build it up, and now it's higher than what it used to be before they dipped into it.
And I think that takes leadership, and that's where, going back to cutting off your nose to spite your face, when this turns and when things start coming back, again, I keep talking about that more optimistically than others, I suppose, but when it turns, you're going to need those fundraising leaders. You're going to need the people that understand the process to put that endowment campaign in place and to raise that money and to engage with donors and the community to make that happen. So it really is thinking of, you have to obviously consider the short game, but considering the long game as well.
Absolutely.
Well,
Ligia, we talked.
No, go ahead,
talked
Sarah.
a lot about. This is the problem. When we're all together, it's even worse. But we can sort it out better than
It's
we can.
part of our charm. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's really hard to be our waitress in a restaurant.
That's why people are going to continue tuning in every week.
We hope. So we talked a lot about Canada because that's where our home base is, but you have this international experience. So what is it? Is legacy giving responding the same way? So we talked about Canada, meeting with our donors, that people are looking at codicils or making their first time gifts. Are you seeing that across the globe in your legacy giving, or is it different in different countries?
Yeah, in the countries where legacy giving is more normalized, so where people know about it, they know how it works and everything, we're seeing the same thing. So in the UK, in the Netherlands, and so on. Different markets have different levels of understanding and knowledge about gifts and wills. So it really, really varies. In Australia as well, it's the same. The Australian market is very similar to the Canadian one. It's a great country to look at for inspiration and so on. So in talking with my colleagues who work in these markets, they're seeing that when they have conversations with donors, everything's very positive. They really, really do appreciate all the calls, and they don't feel at all like they're being used or or taken advantage of. If anything, it really helps break that isolation, because let's not forget, these are, you know, legacy pledgers are older donors who are probably living alone or are now being isolated from their loved ones, and so they need that extra, you know, care and attention. So it's quite positive. But everyone is, you know, and in talking with my colleagues who have similar positions in other INGOs, it's the same thing. It's very much focused on, you know, continuing to build the relationships and being more careful. You know, a couple of INGOs have literally stopped doing legacies, which in my opinion is a mistake, but you know, no judgment.
We were not naming names today.
No,
but yeah,
no, because I mean, they probably have other reasons why not to, that I'm, you know, so that's fine. Like, no judgment really, but it's a shame.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have sort of kind of shifting gears a little bit, but do you have like a example from your career so far of a gift that you worked on that was just super transformational, sort of to give those of people watching our show, because I know there are, that don't have experience with like legacy gifts, that was a really transformational gift for an organization you work for. Doesn't have to be recent, but like I just think it's always nice for people to hear about those kind of the impact pieces. And,
There's always one that comes to mind, and it's the one I always share every time I present or I'm asked a question like this. And it's both a tale of what not to do, but how it can be transformational. So several years ago, when I was consulting, I was brought into a Canadian international development organization to reset their major gift and plan giving program. And so I stayed on for a little over a year to continue managing while they were kind of restructuring all that. And a legacy gift came in. It had been sitting in the office for a while because they didn't really know what to do. The donor had designated it to a program that the organization was not delivering. So, lesson learned, make sure it's very clear what you do. So basically what we needed to do was to find an organization with a similar vocation as my clients, but that delivered a program like what was designated. So after doing some research and so on, I found an organization. I got the authorization from the senior management team to re-gift it to that organization. So fast forward to December 21st, 22nd, I think, or 23rd, like, you know, like right before, like you're closing up and you're about to go for Christmas break. And I called the DOD at that organization and I said, hey, so we received a legacy gift. It was 100% of this woman's estate.
Wow.
Yeah, she had never married, did not have any kids. And FYI also, when I looked her up in the database, she had probably given like 3 $25 gifts in her lifetime and had left 100% of her estate to the organization.
Wow.
So that speaks volume about, like, there's so many things to unpack in here. It's crazy. So that's another conversation. So anyway, I called her up and I said she left 100% of her estate and she designated it for youth programs in the north, for Inuit communities in the north. But we don't do this. And so I saw that you have a program and I'd like to send you the money because we can't keep it, right? She goes, oh, okay, great. Yeah, no problem. She goes, can I ask you how much it is? And I said, well, it's $592,000. I'll never forget that number. And the line went dead. I'm like, hello, are you still there? And she had started crying. So she starts crying. I start crying. Then we're both crying on the phone. We're like, no. It turns out that they had just recently lost their funding for that program.
Oh my goodness.
So it was like probably the best Christmas present I ever gave anyone, although it wasn't my present to give, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And as a side note, like, I have a special attachment to the North. When I was in college, I went and I did a student exchange to the Arctic. So I've always had like this special it holds a very special part in my life because, you know, having that experience to go to the Canadian Arctic and do all that. So it was really like perhaps like my best memory as a fundraiser in my entire 20-year career, to be able to do that for another organization. So that was really cool.
Wow, Ligia, that's an amazing story. And I think maybe a great way to wrap up, Sarah, unless we have one last question from you, Sarah?
No, we've still got hottest topics to get to.
Are you gonna stay? Are you staying for hot topics, Lisa?
Sure. Sure. This is fun.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, no, that was a wonderful story, and thank you so much for joining us. And now you get to participate in what is the hottest part of fundraising TV anywhere. Hot topics with really fancy graphics.
We need to have a sound effect for the hot topic.
Yeah. That's our audio visual guy, Simon.
Is Simon working on graphics?
I don't know. We should tell him though, because I've lost my cue card that had our graphic on it. So apologies, everyone.
I have a Mr. Sketchy close by. I could make them.
He's pretty good with the graphic stuff.
He is. There you go. Yeah.
Oh, there we go, Liz.
Topics.
That is very high tech.
There you go.
So the hot topic that we talked about this week on and off in our group chat, and I think we're going to be bringing it. So Ligia and World, every Wednesday we hold like a coffee break. So it's not a webinar. There's no topic. There's just come and commiserate and laugh and cry. So one of the topics that we were talking about is this feeling of guilt if we're still working, guilt and kind of a little bit of shame. This started with the topic of value, that we all hold value, and no, we shouldn't be furloughing staff where possible, that organizations are already calling their staff back to say, we need your help. So I know I'm feeling it a little bit because I feel solely responsible as the fundraiser for my organization that is still open and running and having a lot of demands because the population is seniors that we work with during this time. So I've been dealing with it not very well. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So how is everybody else feeling about this?
My guilt's different because I have the guilt of not being employed and not being able to contribute. And that includes being able to influence. Oh God, here we go. Let me just, not being able to contribute to this strategy that we're talking about and make a difference. The other thing that I never thought I'd struggle with, because as a fundraiser, when someone would say, it drives me crazy getting asked, I was like, well, say no, you have that choice. But the other piece that I struggle with is not everybody, there's this movement to say, you're not spending money on gas, give that to your favorite charity. Well, when you're not working and you're not used to not working, you wonder, if I give that money that I'm saving on gas, what am I going to do at the end at the end of the bucket? So there's that guilt, and of course the guilt of being a good housekeeper. I don't know. Yeah, mine's a little different. I'm the wonky donkey.
I don't know. I had I think an epiphany about this last night, which is there's always guilt and shame in our lives, and the things that we were typically maybe feeling those feelings about before aren't there anymore, so they had to transfer somewhere. So they've transferred in this, and they've transferred into this. So the guilt that I felt 2 months ago about are my kids overscheduled? Do they have too much on their plate? Has transferred pretty directly to, oh, I'm ignoring them all day and trusting that they can get their schoolwork done because I'm busy with work and I'm ignoring them. I don't know. There's just this expectation that we feel guilt and shame about things in our lives, and things have changed and we can't feel guilt and shame about those things. So we have new things that we've adopted.
Mine's been around. So in the opposite of what Lisa's dealing with, I'm incredibly fortunate that I work with a hospital foundation, and we're right in the epicenter of helping support COVID-19. But what I have a lot of guilt about is watching organizations I care about and people I care about losing their jobs, being laid off, while I'm watching the generosity of the community coming towards, you know, what we're able to do. And I do think my colleagues in other foundations and in other organizations that are benefiting from this have a sense of guilt of watching the industry waste away right now in some ways while we're seeing this uptick. And it's a weird dynamic, and it's you know, all four of us have very different experiences around this pandemic, but yeah, I just feel like there's such a pervasive sense of guilt and shame amongst just people in general, but in the fundraising sector as well, around how differently this is affecting people. So I don't know, Leisha, you don't have to delve into any personal, but that's kind of where I think it's been a pervasive sort of sentiment that I've been seeing. And I think we all need to be a little kinder to ourselves and to each other and do what we can while we can. So yeah, that's definitely.
And know that everybody's doing what they can from where they can, and that life is beautiful, and things will go back to, you know, they'll go back. We're gonna cross the finish line of this in one way or another. So
Lisa's our sunny optimist of the panel.
We can set aside the guilt and shame we can put on our lipstick and cross the finish line instead of crawling across. You know,
is that one of the things I'm supposed to feel guilty about, that I'm not putting on
wearing
makeup,
lipstick?
doing my hair?
No.
And putting on real clothes.
I'm feeling guilty about, you know, here I was up until like 5 weeks ago, I was training for a race, and now I'm like, I have all the time in the world to do it. And what am I doing? Nothing.
Not training for a race.
Not training for a race, but I do watch some good TV.
I hear. I wish I had more time to watch TV. I'm so jealous of everyone else who's like binge watching everything on Netflix and Crave.
There's
and everything
nothing good. There's nothing good.
I watched Contagion last night. It was
why?
Reality TV. I was missing it.
I watched Opera. They're showing it on YouTube, the 25th anniversary version. Anyway, for me, the guilt, I've been mitigating a little bit the guilt, because I'm like, well, I also feel very privileged that I still have a paying job and that I can do it from the comfort of my home. Very pleased that I don't have to travel, obviously, that I've been grounded, although I do miss travel. I'm starting to get a little antsy.
Yeah.
Especially seeing that a lot of, in some of the countries where Greenpeace has an office, has seen some fundraisers being furloughed, not like a lot of the face-to-face fundraisers who are always in a more precarious situation than those who are in the office. So that really sucks. Like, it really, really sucks. But also frustration that I can't do more to help people in my community, because I'm a high risk with because I have asthma and chronic bronchitis, and actually I've been with a nagging cough for 2 weeks, and an asthmatic cough. So obviously it's like there's no way I can go and, you know, help. Like, I mean, I do help my neighbor and stuff like that, but that's the extent of it. And that frustrates me, because in a time like this, when I know that a lot of seniors need help and so on, you know, if I were better fit, like health-wise, I would definitely volunteer to go and help in senior homes, or like do, you know, grocery runs or whatever the case may be, you know. So it's more that. But
so Leisha, I'm having trouble getting people to say yes.
Really?
So it's, you know, it's my parents' friends, and I'm like, I can do this for you, and they're like, no, we're okay. It's our one chance to get out of the house. And I'm like, okay, but when it gets bad, give me a call.
Like you're putting yourself at risk. No, please.
No, there's something to be said about, you know, living a fuller life and being able to choose the risk.
Yes.
Right? So be able to say, I'm okay, like I'm an adult, I choose this, right? Yeah. So one of the things too that's been going on a lot during this pandemic, and you know, I've been very open that in the 5 weeks that we've been in this, I have done one webinar, but it's like a fire hose. Like, I cannot keep up with the sessions that are being offered. And great that I know that there's a bias, 3 sessions from AFP that is being offered for free. But how are you guys feeling? Are you through the shame and guilt and all the work, or how are you just doing sessions? Are you sending sessions to people? Are you finding it useful that all of a sudden there's all these free sessions?
I'm finding it
mixed
useful.
feelings here.
I accidentally did a webinar the other day. But yeah, no, I'm finding it useful. You know, I'm preparing for my CFRE, so it's very useful. It's very relevant for me. And again, I don't have that pressure of, you know, of job maintaining some sort of performance, or, you know, that whole job thing. Right
Oh no,
now.
we're holding your performance accountable during the pandemic.
I do my own performance review on a daily basis. It's not fun.
And you're doing performance review for the Prime Minister and the panel. So
I am,
you know,
yeah.
I appreciate your daily updates on who's got the best pandemic hair. And,
I do know I need to find out where they shop.
I am finding the webinars. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's great that we all want to provide each other with information. I take it with a grain of salt. I know that some of this is people trying to acquire business in the middle of a crisis, and there's no harm in that. And no judgment, but I just try and remember that it's not required for me to participate in every single one, and being a little bit more judicious about which ones I'm actually participating in has been. But I am finding for our team who are at home and feeling like they're not necessarily able to do what they're doing because they're more front facing, more so than I am. It's a good opportunity for us to cram a lot of professional development in a very short space of time. So it's been really beneficial for that piece. And I think if people can take advantage of as many of them as possible, it's always good.
Do you want to get started?
Yeah, so go grab my bacon. So we weren't sure how you. So Sadie has pre-cooked the bacon.
I pre-cooked the bacon, so I don't want to have to have you wait for 40 minutes.
That's 40 minutes to bake bacon?
I don't know. I think I might be doing it wrong. I'm not sure.
Okay, never admit we're wrong. Everything.
We're always right at the drunk chef.
That's right.
I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. Well, I've come this far to live in this crowd room. Need some new religion, and I need it pretty soon. Drink, I used to smoke, and then I danced. I used to cuss, I used to bust.
So welcome back to a brand new episode of The Drunk Chefs. Today, I'm doing something a little bit different because why not? I've invited a very special guest to join me today on my call, and she'll be coming on very shortly. But we're going to just do a little remote, virtual Drunk Chef episode. So let's see how this plays out. So welcome back to a brand new episode. Today, I'm introducing my special guest who's here with me, Sadie. Hi, Sadie. How are you?
Hello.
Sadie is a young, as you can see, but passionate home chef as well. She makes a lot of her own dishes. She has a great website, which I'll link to here below, which you should check out. But I wanted to have Sadie on my show just for something a little bit different. And Sadie is certainly more fascinating than I am. So welcome, Sadie. Thanks for coming on my show.
Yeah, no problem. I'm really excited to be here. I've been preparing all morning, and I think I'm ready to cook some delicious eggs.
So tell me first, before you start to cook some eggs, what's with the cooking thing? Most kids just want to play on their phones, or I don't know, hang out and do nothing. What's the deal?
You know, I find cooking as sort of like a therapy to me, and I really enjoy it, and I really love it, and it makes me feel happy whenever I cook something delicious, or when I cook something and it fails. That means that, you know, I'm learning, and it helps because, you know, I'm getting to experience new things, and I think that's really important.
That's a great philosophy. I mean, that's really, cooking is, for me, one of the greatest treasures because I get to feed my family and friends, and there's really nothing better than doing that. Nourishing people who you love is an amazing gift that we have. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But yeah, do you want to get started?
Yeah, awesome. I can tell you like about the dish
So
and answer
yeah.
as many questions as desired.
Okay, cool.
So today I am making egg muffins. I call them eggy muffins, So the origin of this dish was that one time my aunt made this for me for breakfast and for my brother as well. And I thought it was really cool how she did it. So I sort of figured it out myself with a bunch of new ingredients. And here we are.
So why don't you tell us what ingredients you're going to use for the dish?
Okay, so for my eggy muffins, I'm going to be making one in this bowl ramekin thing. It's 2 eggs, some cheese, basically how much you want, and 2 strips of half-cooked bacon.
Brilliant. I love bacon. It's like one of my
Also,
favorite.
forget the spices.
And spices, which I use are cayenne pepper,
Ooh,
salt, and pepper.
brilliant. So why don't you get started, Sades? Love to see how you make this dish.
Well, I'm going to get started by preheating the oven.
So what are you preheating the oven to?
I preheat the oven to 350 degrees on bake.
Sadie, what's your favorite thing to make, Sadie?
Pardon?
What's your favorite dish to make?
I have a lot of favorite dishes to make. I really like making like pasta dishes. I have 2 favorites, which is potato gnocchi and lemon broccoli pasta, which I make a lot. But I also really like this dish because it's sort of like a family favorite. Because every time my family comes over for Christmas, they have a brunch at our house, and I make about 24 eggy muffins, which is that's like 2 dozen eggs.
Hey, cranking those out of the kitchen. Wow.
Yeah. I just do it in like large tins, not these like dinky bowls. Now I'm gonna cut up the bacon into my container. So now I'm gonna add my salt and pepper and my cayenne pepper, of course. I like to do this after because otherwise when it's cooked, it just slides off the egg. With this one, it gets cooked into it.
Perfect. That's so fast too, right? You can make this in like only a few minutes. Well, I guess you did the bacon ahead of time, but if you have some extra bacon around, then it doesn't take very long to put together.
I'm just gonna cut out a large piece of parchment paper, and I'm just gonna stick it inside and mold it to the bowl. All right, there we go. Butter added. And now I'm gonna add my egg mixture. And now I'm gonna wipe off my hand because I got egg on my fingers.
Okay,
All
good.
right, awesome.
So that's going to go into your 350-degree oven for how long?
For about until it rises completely. It's about 10-15 minutes depending on how much egg and how much bacon and how much cheese you added. Because if it's a lot, like with this one, you're probably only gonna need to cook it for like 10 minutes. But if you cook like a smaller one with less egg and bacon and cheese, it's probably gonna take less time. Okay.
So it sounds like the eggs are almost done. So go on, Says. What were we talking about?
So the eggs are almost done, and by the time that I finish, by the time that I finish cutting this avocado up, it'll probably be done because I like to have my egg muffins with avocado and some fresh berries. Unfortunately, we don't have that, but I'll just use some avocado.
Yeah, I like to put in sometimes avocado or like cherry tomatoes. You can also sprinkle over some like basil on top as well, which is really kind of nice.
I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, but if you like it, to each their own. All right, there we go.
That looks really good, Sades. That was really quick and easy. You're right. I think I'll make that for my lunch today too.
So I'm gonna carefully take this out because the container is very hot and I do not want to burn myself. So this is the end result that I'm very happy with it. It's an egg muffin. It's got like bacon, it's got cheese, it's got a lot of delicious things and aspects to it. And yeah, pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty delicious too.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Sadie, for coming on the show and showing us how to make that. That looks delicious.
Thank you. Thank
All
you
right.
for having me.
I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I dance. I used to drink, I used to smoke, and then I dance. Well, this company's club of living in this crowd room needs a new religion, and I need it pretty soon. I used to smoke, and then I dance. I used to cuss, I used to fuss.
Hello, I'm Howard Lake from UK Fundraising. Welcome to another episode of Fundraising Tune of the Day. And that was the theme music for BBC News, composed by David Lowe, and that was the version adapted by Oscar Brennan. My fundraising tip of the day is related to news, particularly in this time of lockdown and coronavirus. And I'm going to suggest that you make sure that your website, which has all the updates about COVID, coronavirus, and how your charity has responded, or is providing different services, or perhaps running different fundraising events, make sure all of your content is dated. When did it go live? People need to know and be assured that you're publishing the latest information or that they're reading current information. So make sure you add a date to all of your key copy on your website. Tune in soon for another episode of Fundraising Tune of the Day.
Do-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Baby, I just can't treat you right. Well, I hate to leave you, baby. I don't mean maybe, because I love you so. Do-do-de-o-do-de-o-do-de-o-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. Good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Do-do-do-do. I hate to leave you, but I really must say, good night, sweetheart. Good night. Wow.